Episode 3. Um, Thanks to anyone that's listened to the first two. It's been really overwhelming, the positive feedback that I've been getting from people reaching out and telling me how they're connecting with it, and it's been really, really cool. So thank you for the engagement. Thanks for reaching out. It means the world to me because honestly, starting this was terrifying. Getting vulnerable in front of an audience, even though it's not massive, but as many people as they want can listen to this. So, strangers can be listening and they know nothing about me, and it's incredibly intimidating to get super vulnerable in front of what could be the world. But, I'm doing this for the people that feel like they can't. For the people that feel like that can see someone else doing it and go, shit, maybe I can do that too. If you have listened to the first two and this is your third time listening, it would be awesome if you could follow the show, leave a review, leave a comment, really just like engage and interact. I'd love to hear some feedback of what people think. But yeah, that's been awesome. So today's title is something that I've been battling with for a long time, and titling it, the title of the podcast is realizing that I'm an addict. And that is something that I never thought I would say, ever. I've touched on it a little bit in the first two episodes of, sort of how I was self-medicating and smoking a lot of marijuana, and what became sort of a social weekend sort of escape became an everyday reliance for a long period of time. There is part of it that feels really shameful. You go through school. I'm the youngest of three children, with an older brother and an older sister, and parents that are incredibly responsible and great role models. And I really feel like some of the things that I chose to do went against the expectations and the values of what our family holds. And there's still a part of me that feels really embarrassed and ashamed about sort of the hole that I went down. But at the same time, there's a contrasting idea of that I did what I did in the time to be able to survive. And the depression nearly got me. Twice. And whilst I'm not proud of being a drug user, it got me to this point, that I was able to turn things around. So in this episode, I'm going to discuss sort of the moment where I realized that I had a problem, and what that felt like, and then what sort of happened after that. Because I feel like that journey is really, really important. I vividly remember the last time that I smoked a joint. It was a Saturday night. I think it would have been March 1st, 2023. And my future girlfriend, future fiance, Natalie, was over, and we were just chilling out Saturday night, and yeah, I decided to get high while she was there. Asked if she wanted to partake, and she declined, but I did anyway. Um, and I remember sitting there giggling at a movie that we were watching and thinking, oh, fuck, life's great or whatever. And then just kind of like the next day sort of realizing that, like, it's not really that fun, eh? Like, I wasn't really experiencing the connection in its fullest. And I still had a little bit lying around of a stash, and I just sort of said, that's it. I don't want to do this anymore. There were times where it became really evident that I had a reliance when I had a bad day at work, a stressful period of time with outside connections, when I was really struggling with my mental capacity. I was finding it really challenging because all I wanted to do was smoke, to escape. Because the weed made you feel like I felt like it was the only thing that was able to slow my thoughts down, slow my brain down. And rather than going in that vicious cycle, it just kind of put a dampener on it. But what that was doing was really just masking the problem, which is something that I'd been doing for more than 20 years. And I don't remember the exact day or time or what happened, but I remember we were driving on the Eastern Freeway, and it's the first time that these words ever left my mouth, and I said them to Nat, and I said, I'm an addict. Like, my brain's wired differently. And I have a reliance on things to get me through. And that was scary. To admit that I was vulnerable, susceptible, and honestly sick. And I felt weak. I felt incredibly weak. Because there's so many people out there that I know that can dabble in alcohol, in drugs, in gambling, in a lot of tempting pastimes. And it was the first time that I sort of said, nah, I'm different. I can't do what everyone else can do. That was scary. That made me feel really lonely. And I struggled with that for a long time. Like, I was probably sober for about, sober off weed for about 5 months, and I was really having a hard time. And I picked up the phone and I texted a good friend of mine, Naz from the Streets barbershop in Geelong, who's someone I'd met through the years of barbering and I had a lot of respect for. And I texted him telling him that I was struggling with my journey. And he picked up the phone and called me straight away. I remember that it was a Friday morning. I was on the way to work on the Eastern Freeway, and he picked up the phone. He's like, brother, this is what we're going to do. And he recommended me to go to NA. He organised someone that we knew through a mutual friend to go and meet up with in Paran to go to a Narcotics Anonymous meeting. And I was incredibly intimidated rolling up on that Friday night because there's going to be people there that have been on heroin, on ice, on MD and acid and mushrooms, and I felt like I didn't belong. I was like, oh man, I'm not sure that this is what was me, and sort of said that, and the response I got was that if you live to use, you're an addict. I was like, whoa, like, yeah, that's me, because I can't get through. I couldn't get through a day without smoking weed. And I sat in that room, not knowing anybody, watching these people share their stories and celebrate their milestones, and being in that room with people that were like-minded and had similar experiences to my problems. I felt less alone. And that was a massive turning point in my recovery, because I felt that there were people that would understand. And I didn't necessarily agree with everything that NA stands for, because I'm not very religious, and a lot of it talks about giving your trust into a higher power and that sort of thing. And I don't know what my belief is around spirituality, but I do know that being in that environment with people that have suffered and people that have experienced the same desires that I have, regardless of your substance of choice, of your DOC, it changed my life, man. And I felt seen for the first time in a long time. And it felt like there was this massive, massive weight off my shoulders. That like, everyone can see me for me now. And I don't have to be putting on this big facade. And I don't need to pretend like everything's okay, because I can just admit that I am fucking struggling. That I can text people in, that I got numerous phone numbers at the end of my first group saying, if you ever need anything, just text me. And I've got phone numbers still in my contact book that I haven't had to use, but I know that if I texted someone, even if they didn't remember me, and I said, hey man, I went to NA last year with you, I'm really having a hard time, that the support's there. And it is truly, truly a liberating experience. And I'm so grateful to Naz, and I've told him this, but him referring me to there changed my life, and I'm so grateful for that. Whilst I was, recovering and coming to terms with the fact that I was an addict and addicted to marijuana, I sort of was at the same time addressing issues that I had around my alcohol consumption. In 2023, I had probably 6 times that year that I was absolutely blackout drunk and vomiting on myself and passing out and losing stuff and just generally acting completely out of character and out of my personal values, and doing things that I woke up the next day and I was ashamed of the way that I behaved. And it was grand final day, 2023, and Nat and I were at a friend's house, and I rinsed and repeated the same sort of dance that I'd done the whole year, and got far too drunk, and got home after vomiting and passing out in a gutter at 6 p.m. that my relationship with alcohol was really unhealthy. And I don't know if I have ever admitted that I'm an alcoholic, because I wasn't drinking every day, but I was a binge drinker terribly. And I would have a lot of stress going on, and I would almost, know that I've got an event coming up, and I go, fuck, like, that's the one, let's let loose at this. And I was behaving in a way that I was really, really not proud of. And I remember sort of after passing out at about 7 p.m, waking up around 1 a.m, and just, everyone's had these moments where you go, oh, I'm not drinking ever again. I knew that if I continued down this path, I was going to lose everything that I'd worked so hard for. Because I knew that my relationship with Natalie would crumble if I kept behaving the way that I did. And it was a real fork in the road moment of like, all right, you can behave like that, but this is what you're going to lose. Or you can grow the fuck up and be a man and be true to your values that you believe deep in your core. And that's what I did. So on the 1st of October 2023, I decided I'm not drinking anymore. And to this day, this is going to drop on the 20 something of October. But haven't had a drink. It's been hard. There's been times where I've had to forego events that people were drinking at, and I've felt lonely and scared and vulnerable and embarrassed, and sort of the same feelings that I was feeling when I admitted that I was addicted to weed. When I sort of admitted to myself that I had a problem with alcohol, I felt them even stronger, because there's so many more people that can just have a couple of drinks and be fine. And I just had to stop. The thing that I find out of all this is that's really interesting is I'll be having conversations in the barbershop, and people will be like, oh, having a couple of beers this weekend. I'm like, nah, I don't drink. And they go, oh, and I'm not embarrassed to say, nah, it's not for me. I drink in excess, and I find it just easier to go without. And the amount of people that either say, I agree, or they have a lot of respect for people that can admit that. It's actually been really overwhelming sometimes. And so many people are so accepting of it. And it doesn't stop that in your head, you see other people drinking and you go, oh, God, I just feel so left out and whatever. But there's also the fact that, like, you see that, and just like you do with other substances, you see people having a good time and you go, oh, I can't do that. That's not for me. That's not the way that I operate. Yeah, it is really, really challenging to admit to yourself that you have these problems. But there are ways to get around it, get past it. And I wouldn't say that any of it's been easy, but there are times where it is easy, and there are times where it's really, really hard. I'm still in the middle of trying to withdraw from nicotine. That's probably been the hardest thing to give up, because I have a severe dependence, and it doesn't really affect my state of mind. Um, I quit smoking a long time ago, but then I was on the good old I get bars, and I've found them incredibly difficult to get off, and that's something I'll talk about a little bit more later. But yeah, it's really, really hard to admit to yourself that you have these problems. And even when I was off weed, off alcohol, I found myself trying to fill holes with other things. And there was a point where, like, and this is super embarrassing to admit, but I'm going to talk about it anyway. But I was addicted to McDonald's. And, like, I was eating it far too much. Every second day, probably. And I would start thinking about it. I wouldn't even be hungry, man. And, like, my brain's firing off these messages like, you need it, you need it, you need it. And, that's what used to happen with drugs. And, then I was making bad decisions with alcohol. And then I'm making bad decisions about food. And it's just the weirdest thing to experience, man, is like, you're almost at war with your own body. It's trying to justify anything for you to get what you want. And it might not even be what you want, but it's like the addiction and your own brain are like two different things. And your addiction's like yapping, like trying to convince your brain to get what it wants, but that's not really what you want. It's such a hard feeling to describe. But the more you sort of like don't feed it, the easier it becomes. Like, once you've done it once, you can do it again, and then you do it twice and 3 times, and you start a role of making better decisions. And then you're sort of rolling from there. Like, I still feel like I'm in recovery, and I probably will be for a long time. Like, I'm gonna, like, the goal that I have in mind to try and, feel like I can have a drink safely again is 2025, and I hope that I've given myself as much knowledge and power as I can over my decision making around drinking, and I have a desire to never, ever, ever be completely out of control again. I don't think I ever want to be drunk again. I want to be able to have a drink. I want to be able to have a beer with my brother at the footy. I want to be able to have a glass of champagne with Nat when we get married. I want to be able to have my first beer with my kids and that sort of thing later in life. But if I'm not able to control it, then I'm completely comfortable never having a drink ever again. I don't think I'll ever smoke weed again. I know that that's my drug of choice, and that I'll probably never be able to do it again. And I'm okay with that. And there's so many other drugs that I'm never going to touch and haven't tried and never going to try. Like, I'm never going to do cocaine. Even though a lot of people do it, I'm not doing it. I'm not doing MD, I'm not doing anything else. Like, I just know my limit now. And I'm so susceptible to it. And I need to make sure that I make better decisions, because I have a lot to lose now. Whereas before I felt like, oh, whatever, it doesn't matter, my life's pretty worthless. But now, being engaged to Natalie, I've got things to lose. And that's scary, but also the best thing that I've ever done. Yeah. I think the thing that I battle with the most is that I just never understood how I got in that situation. And I felt very... Sorry, excuse me. I felt very ashamed of the position that I was in because my parents, my brother and sister, they didn't deserve that. They'd been nothing but great role models for me. I feel like I let them down a lot. But what drives me now is making amends and showing the people around me that supported me and cared for me in my worst moments that I can do it. That I'm winning. And I'm going to keep winning. I'll drop a couple of links in the show notes below of Narcotics Anonymous and some relevant resources that are out there, because I could not recommend it enough if anyone's struggling with addiction, specifically drug addiction, because I don't have any experience with Alcoholics Anonymous, but I assume the program's reasonably similar, and sharing my journey with people has been awesome. Some of the most engaging content I've put out over the last 18 months has been regarding my sobriety, and just keep taking it one day at a time. I don't know, maybe one day I'll wake up and the I am sober app will give me a 10,000 day badge. And that'll be pretty cool. That's if iPhones still exist. I don't know, maybe we'll have phones in our heads or something. But yeah, thanks for listening. Follow the show, leave a comment if you enjoyed it. Reach out, send me a message. I'll try to get back to the thousands of people that are listening, or maybe all 20 of you. But thanks for sharing the journey with me, and I really appreciate it. And I got about 4 more episodes planned for the rest of the season. So, and then we'll take it from there. But yeah, cheers for listening. Thank you.